There's been a lot of attention on Massachusetts courts due to the Karen Read situation. And I wanted to share my story that goes back 29 years, initiating with a separation and then divorce, all civil things with the Massachusetts courts. And I recently had a hearing, and I share my loving prayers for the Massachusetts courts. Take a look on the other side, please. So my story goes back to, as I say, 29 years with separation, divorce. And I saw, it's just decisions being made as far as myself, my ex-wife, my children, that really were not accurate, I guess I would say. And it's fascinating because in my situation, there was a whole backdrop beyond the particulars of separation and divorce, which were challenging enough, where I had a younger brother and his wife and a family situation that really came at me. And it gave me an opportunity to develop an understanding of the tort for the intentional infliction of emotional distress. Anyway, I had a hearing recently, yesterday, and it was a good hearing, and it kind of was another step in my loving encouragement, shall we say, for the Massachusetts courts, because I respect the fact those who've, the Karen Read situation is mainly a one scenario situation, even though it's now in a second trial. There's strong feelings. I'm not going to comment much on the guilt or innocence. I think people can see areas where they believe, for one, an investigation could have been improved, and this kind of thing. And my approach is different, though, because along the way, at times I would be very, I was appropriate, but it's still kind of combative, and just like back and forth. And along the way, that as I developed this understanding of emotional abuse and psychological abuse and the emotional distress, my approach shifted over time to really be one, a loving sense of encouragement for the Massachusetts courts, because I do see the Massachusetts courts are self-absorbed in a way, that the decisions are unto their own, and at times you see and read things that just jar one sense of, at least your own sense of logic and understanding. Yet, I'm a believer that, that the courts of this country, for one, Massachusetts, I consider, could consider the heart of this country. It's where Lexington and Concord came about. Boston used to be known as the hub of the universe, and we're really intense. I've got some Scranton roots, so I got a little friendliness added to the Massachusetts ferociousness. But Massachusetts is very intense. And after having been here 45 years, I finally believe I'm in a loving, situation to give some encouragement and a little tweaking here and there for that Massachusetts mentality. And generally, I say, to me, the issues in the United States are because we're seeing breakdowns in societies in a lot of places. And first and foremost for me is in the court system. Because if we don't have things like liberty and justice for all, sincerely for everybody across the board, and society itself starts to break down. And I've developed this psychology of goodness as strength, and we've got to adhere to our principles, just basic fairness and honesty in our systems. And I think because there's so much energy for people to be successful, to frantic to make money, to be famous, that we're at risk of losing our principles. And my story is one of because I had two grandmothers that lived on 106, 100, nearly 101, and with chicken soup, and that we've got to adhere to those parents who do a great job. Have to adhere to those principles, okay? And that's what the battle about. So I had a hearing yesterday, and I mean, the judge and I, in a I want to say convivial, respectful way, went back and forth, because the area I'm advancing, the tort for the intentional infliction of emotional distress and emotional abuse, extreme narcissism, psychopathy, psychological abuse, are not things people understand, and by and large. And these are things which are affecting society greatly, and we have to understand the psychology. So that's what the coaching training and mediation does with us. You learn the psychology. But, I'm working in my prayers, and I work gently and determinedly that Massachusetts courts and American courts will understand the psychology. We don't have, look at what happened, the gunning down of this young Jewish couple in Washington, D.C. last night. Our psychology is fractured, and we don't have the luxury to stray from just real equality, real fairness, real honesty in Massachusetts, in America, and the world. So that's what my life and work is about. And so I say my prayers that the Massachusetts courts will take some of the constructive advocacy and the constructive criticism even that I bring forward, because America's at the point, Massachusetts at a point, America's at a point, we can't stand corruptive attitudes. We can't stand a lack of integrity. We need honesty. We need fairness. We need dignity for all people in our beginning with our legal system. It's a place where I have been put in a situation. I don't know everything, but I know where I can make a difference. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I was raised by lawyers. My father traveled, but the point, I'm lovingly praying for our Massachusetts courts and rippling out from there, to reinsert fairness, to step up to the level of, to push out self-control and self-indulgence and or whatever, the self-absorbance, and just look at fairness for all people. Because it's a principle, and B, because it could happen to anybody. A lot of people think it couldn't happen to them, but it could happen. Karma suggests it could happen to anyone, and we want to have that fairness. So, thank you. You can take a look at the website. Thank you kindly.